how you like it, yeah.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the We Don't Know TV podcast. My name is Leaf. I'm your host. This is a podcast where we watch the first episode of a show and then we talk about it. So today we are talking about Star Wars Acolyte. The premise on IMDb states an investigation into a shocking crime spree pits a respected Jedi Master against a dangerous warrior from his past. As more clues emerge, they travel down a dark path where sinister forces reveal all is not what it seems. It's alright. I mean, I probably would have maybe phrased it differently, like shorten it down a little bit, but that's pretty much the gist of, what this is. So if it is your first time here, I go through the plot beat by beat, that way you don't have to, and that way I don't forget anything. So we start off with the kind of initial information, whatever you want to call it, for Star Wars. You know how you usually have the crawl, but this time it's just like text on a screen, and it says basically 100 years. This is set 100 years before the Empire. It is a time of peace. Jedi and the Republic have prospered for centuries without war, but in the dark corners, a powerful few are learning the Force in secret, and one is a lone assassin seeking revenge. So we start off on the planet of Ueda, I think is how you say it. We see this assassin, she's covered up, hood over her head, mask over her face. This is played by a black actor, which is already kind of... Well, I guess we'll get to that part later, but people are already going to have problems because the character's black. But let's just stick with the plot. She's heading into town. She's like, yo, where's your Jedi? She flashes like 2 coins, and the alien is immediately like, oh yeah, just go inside. I was like, all right, cool. So clearly no loyalty for this Jedi, just for a little cash. So we enter a cantina, and I've seen online, a lot of people are like, can we have a Star Wars thing that doesn't have a cantina in it? And I never really thought about it until I saw that tweet. And I was like, oh yeah, it does always have like, let's start in a cantina to like give basic information. So I was like, okay, yeah, maybe we could switch it up just a little bit. But as she walks in, the bartender immediately eyes her and he like gives her a look like, yo, something's up. We are introduced to Master Indara. I forget the actress. Was it Carrie-Anne Moss? I just think of like Trinity from The Matrix. And the assassin's like, yo, we got unfinished business. Attack me with all your strength. And she like gets into like a martial arts stance. And all of Indara's, I guess, friends or like the people she's hanging out with start laughing. And Indara's like, yo, chill out. And she's like, listen, me and you, we ain't got no beef. You know what I mean? And the assassin's like, attack me. And she's like, all right, like clearly I gotta start some shit. So she starts attacking. Oh no, real quick, before she starts attacking everybody, Indara's like, oh, Jedi don't attack the unarmed, because this assassin didn't pull out like a lightsaber. She's just like, again, got into a martial arts stance. But she ain't having it. The assassin starts kicking everybody's ass. All of like Indara's friends, she's easily beating. They really don't have a chance. Indara steps in. She pretty much starts beating up the assassin. And what's interesting about this fight is all hand-to-hand combat. Like if you've seen... something like Clone Wars, sometimes they kind of throw hands, but for the most part, it's always like a lightsaber fight between Force users. So it's kind of interesting to see just 2 Force users just kind of go like hand to hand. I can't really think of the last time that's happened. I'm sure it has. I'm sure someone's screaming like, what about that? But I, off the top of my head, I don't really remember it. So it's kind of cool to see, in the choreography, it was like good. It wasn't like, I want to say it was like astounding, but I was like, okay, this is pretty good for what it is. There's a moment where the assassin goes for Indara's lightsaber, and I was like, oh, is she trying to like collect it? Is she just trying to get it off her? Like, what's going on here? But she's not winning. The assassin kind of does this cool flip up to the balcony. She grabs a hostage. Indara goes up to meet her up there. The assassin throws the lady over the railing. Indara uses the Force to catch her real quick, and then suddenly the assassin is gone. Indara goes to look for her, and then they continue to fight. Again, the assassin is really just outmatched here. She's not really getting any licks in for real. And Indara kind of gets her, takes off her mask, and she looks at her, and she's like, oh, it's you. Like, what are you doing here? And she's like, are you not paying attention? Like, I'm here to kill you. So Indara, like, they separate. Indara pulls out her lightsaber. And this interesting thing happens where the assassin's like, a Jedi pulls out their lightsaber when they're ready to kill. So implying like, are you going to come kill me? And Indara puts her lightsaber down. So it's like, there's some sort of backstory here that we're not getting. But it is interesting that, again, this isn't the Jedi that we know. This is set 100 years before that. So for there to be this rule of like, hey, if you pull out your lightsaber, like that means you're ready to take a life. And the fact that Endara's like, oh, maybe I don't want to kill this person. It's like, huh. But the bartender downstairs is still there for some reason. And, well, I guess it's his spot, so it makes sense. But he makes noise, which kind of breaks up the fight between them. The assassin takes that moment to throw a knife at him, and Dar stops the knife with the force, but that leaves her open, and the assassin hits Indar with a knife right to the chest. And in this moment, she makes a face, which I found interesting, and maybe it was just me, but I couldn't tell if it was astonishment, as in like, oh, I just killed a Jedi, or if it was like, oh, I didn't want to hurt this person, but I did hurt this person, very much in a like, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it type vibe. So I was like, I'm not really sure what the like relationship is between there, and if this assassin is really like fully about it. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested. But then we see the lightsaber on the floor, and the assassin walks away. So again, it seemed like she was reaching for it before, so I guess she was just trying to disarm her. But I really thought like she was trying to like collect her lightsaber. So I guess I was like, oh, I guess I was wrong. But for some reason, the assassin goes down and she grabs her knife. She's like ready to like throw it at the bartender, but she sees that he is with his kid, and she decides to leave them alive. So I was like, okay, clearly she's like a little dark-sided, but she's not full-on dark-sided. It's not really clear, like, is she Sith? Is she like, like where does she really lie in all of this? I don't know. But she wakes up with a start. She is on a ship. She has this tiny little droid named Pip, who's like the size of like a Game Boy. I don't know a good analog. It's almost like it's not like a small tablet or like a big phone. But yeah, it's this cute little thing. It sounds like there's a job that she needs to go do. She steps outside her room. She runs into her coworker. He's like, Osha, why didn't you come out last night? So we learn that her name is Osha. She's like, don't worry about what I do, in my free time. We learn that his name is Philic. She's like, yo, what's the emergency? And he's like, oh, the shield generators are down and we need to repair them. So as they go outside, we meet the like captain of the ship, I guess. We learn that they're called mechnics. So these are kind of like the mechanics. And he's like, yo, mechnics are disposable. Like, we don't even need them. The only thing that's important is the cargo. And we get this small little joke of like, yo, we can hear you over the intercoms. Like, Philic is replaceable, but I'm not. So like, let's chill out. It turns out that Pip is also like a little power tool as well. So she like solders like a line, and that accidentally causes a fire. She goes to take out the fire, and she just suddenly like zones out on the fire, and you can hear screaming. And so like clearly something from her past is like brought up by seeing this fire, and they're like, hello. And she's like, oh, my bad. And then she uses Pip to like as like a fire extinguisher as well. So I think this is like a I just lost the word for it. But one of those tools that has a bunch of stuff in it, but in droid form. And as they're out there, a Jedi ship arrives. This is where we meet Jedi Knight Yord and his Padawan Tassi. They are looking for Osha, who is apparently a former Jedi. And this is a weird part where the captain, who just said that they were disposable, was like, yo, we don't have no passengers on here. And Yord's like, no, she's a mechnic. And he's like, no, we don't have mechnics. So he's like protecting her. But it's like, you just said they were disposable. So I don't really know what the vibes are here. Yord is about to use like the mind trick on him. And the captain's like, I guess, right hand or whatever. She's like, Osha's in like this room. So Osha goes back to her room after fixing, the ship. And Yord is there waiting for her. She's excited to see him. Apparently they have a pass. She's like, oh, it's nice to see that you finally passed your trials and become a Jedi Knight. I never thought I'd see you again. What are you doing here? He pulls out the handcuffs. Obviously vibes are different now. She's like, yo, what's going on? And he's like, yo, take a seat. And it was in this moment, because my brain works fast, I immediately came out to 4 different outcomes, right? So number 1, I was like, either she's really good at playing clueless, like she is evil, but she's like, oh, like she's pretending to be this good person. Number 2, split personality, and I was like, God, I hope they don't do that. Number 3, I was like, maybe she has a twin sister. I was like, that could also be weird, but I don't know. Let's see where that goes. And number 4 is an alien that can shapeshift, but then I was like, well, why would the alien take her form of all forms? So just a thought I had mid-episode. But we continue. They basically start to interrogate her. They're like, how long have you been at Meknek? She says 6 years. They were like, you were trained to be a Jedi. And she's like, yeah, but, I quit. And being a Jedi, like, having those skills doesn't really pay the bills. So she's like, I had to do something that would give me money. And they're like, all right, cool. When did you join the order? She was like, when I was 8. And they're like, yeah, apparently there's a note about, like, concerns of your age and that you were mourning family. And she's like, listen, the Jedi Council made their decision to, like, let me on. And they're like, yeah, but you lost your entire family. Your mothers, your sister, and your village all died in a fire. Training was apparently really hard for you. They say that attachments to the people that we lost are, like, the most difficult to let go. And she's like, why are you guys here? Like, what is this all for? And she's like, well, a Jedi was murdered on Ueda. It was Master Andara. And the suspect matched your description. And she's like, you think I did it? And then they're like, well, where were you? She's like, I was here on this room on the ship. Like, why would I kill her? Apparently there was a note that Indara wanted to stop Osha's training. And she's like, well, leaving the Jedi Order was my decision. It was no one else's. So, like, I have no beef with her. And she's like, you really think I'd betray the Order, let alone overpower a Jedi Master? Like, what are we talking about? And as this happens, the Padawan went out to go... Well, she left the room, but she came back with a bartender. And the bartender's like, yeah, that's her right there. So Yord is like, listen, it don't matter what I think, you know what I mean? Like, cards are stacked against you. We're going to put you on a prisoner transport and take you to Coruscant. Osha's like, well, you're making a mistake. We move over to Coruscant. This is where we meet Sol for the first time. He is instructing some kids. He's like, close your eyes. Your eyes can deceive you. Give yourself to the Force. It's like diving into the ocean. Give yourself to its weight, its stillness, its uncertainty, what comes into your mind. And then as he says that, another Jedi walks in, and he kind of acknowledges her. One kid goes, oh, I see balance. The other one says life. This other kid goes, fire. It's consuming everything that tries to stop it. And in that moment, I was like, all right, 2 things. One, just because I've seen so much Star Wars. 1, watch that kid, because you never know. And 2, maybe talk to that kid a little more, because maybe they see something that everyone else doesn't, because sometimes the Jedi are just full-on idiots. But anyways, so it's like the Force is powerful, yes, like fire or like the ocean. It's power we must respect, but we'll deal with that later. All right, everybody go to lunch. He goes to talk to the person that walked in. It is Master Vernestra. I think I'm saying that right. Turns out that they're dear friends. She's like, oh, it's so lucky for the kids to have you as a teacher. And he's like, honestly, the kids teach me more than I teach them, for real. And he's like, like, what's up? And she's like, I have news. I know you and Indar were friends. We have captured your old Padawan. He makes a face, and Vanessa's like, I can see like you're really attached to her. Maybe I shouldn't have brought this up to you. And Sol's like, listen, I don't think she would do it. We saved her on her home planet. She sees us as her protectors. Like, when we saved her, like, this has to be a problem. Like, this is a mistake. And there's a small moment where Vernestra gets close to Sol, and she's like, if word gets out that we killed one of our own, and then he goes, our political enemies would use that against us. And she's like, yeah, our justice has to be swift, an example needs to be made. Despite your feelings, do I have your support? And he goes, of course. And clearly, he's not on board. And to me, that's already, like, a red flag, especially for Vernestra. If the Jedi Order has always been like, oh, hey, don't have attachments. Attachments lead to the dark side. Why would you go to the Master, who clearly, like, she can even see, like, yo, this man's a little too close to the, not the crime, he's too close to the case, you know what I mean? Like a classic, like, cop thing. Like, you're too close to the case, we gotta take you off. Like, why put him on? But I digress. We move on to the prisoner ship. There was a guy with, like, this alien on his face. The guy says Dybbuk. That is what the thing is called. It is a parasite used to subdue violent criminals. She's like, oh, is it hurting him? They're like, no, but it does, like, weird stuff to your brain. We heard you killed a Jedi. She was like, nah, it wasn't me. And they're like, all right, well, we're planning to escape. Are you in? And she's like, we're floating through hyperspace. That could kill all of us. And they're like, all right, well, the ship's piloted by droids. We're going to take them out and then use the escape pods. And she's like, that could literally kill all of us. And she's like, The prisoners are like, you want to put your faith in the Jedi? And she's like, yes, I trust them. And they're like, whatever, like, you're crazy. So they signal this one, like, cyborg looking dude. He takes out the droids, and they're really cool. They, like, they, like, deactivate, but, like, turn into a chair. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool design. I love when Star Wars can do, like, cool stuff with, like, aliens or, like, droids. One of the other prisoners has, like, a tentacle come out of his head, and he, like, takes out the droid and, like, gets its arm, and they start to set everyone free except for Osha. And the ship is just now falling through space because no one's piloting it. So they leave on the escape pod. Things start to fall. Osha tries to grab Pib with the Force, but she can't use it. So theory of her being like pretending to be a nice person is already out the window. She eventually grabs it with her hand, grabs him with her hand. Again, he's like this like Swiss Army knife. So she like detaches his head and like uses it to like jack into the thing to like set her free. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that hurts him. I doubt it, but Star Wars doesn't really care about what droids think or feel. But anyways, she gets free. She's going to the escape pod. She of course has to be a goody two shoes. Turns around, saves the guy with the parasite on his head because apparently they left him. The parasite flies away. The guy wakes up screaming, pushes her to the side, runs in, and takes off the escape pod. And I'm like, that's what you get for being nice. And Osha, there's no other pods, so she just has to brace for impact. So she like buckles herself to a seat, and the ship just crash lands on the planet. We go back to Sol. He's looking at an old picture of Osha as a Padawan. Jecki comes in, who is apparently his Padawan. She's like, Vanestra requests your presence in the attention level. And she's like, can I, permission to speak freely? He's like, okay, yeah, sure. And she's like, why do you have a picture of your old Padawan? And she's like, this feels like attachment, which could lead to... And she was going to say the dark side, but before she can finish, he goes, our memories are lessons. If we don't meditate on the past, and she finishes, we're doomed to repeat it. Again, I'm like, the attachment is clearly strong with this man. People should be paying more attention, but everyone's just kind of letting it slide. But what do I know? I'm just the viewer. So we go to the detention level, and the prisoners have already been captured. They didn't make it far at all. They blame Osha for everything. Sol walks over to the, what do you want to call it? Cage or whatever. The room with the parasite guy that's in it. And he's like, I sensed her. She's evil. Like, she has so much darkness in her. And he uses Jedi mind trick on him. And the guy's like, she helped me and I betrayed her. He kind of looks at Vanestra like, you see? And she's like, okay, just because she did like one good thing doesn't mean like she suddenly, we can't just let go of her alleged crimes. Like, we have to like bring her in. Sol wants to see if she is alive. Vanestra's like, it's not really likely. And he's like, no, she's alive. I can feel it. Vanestra's like, listen, we can't afford to lose you. You're far too valuable. And so I was like, listen, if she's guilty, it's my fault. I need to take accountability. And Vanestra's like, all right, fine, take a small team and like be discreet and like go check it out. Again, it doesn't really make sense to me because again, this guy's being so obvious with his attachment to Osha. And she already said earlier, like, she hasn't been with a Jedi for 6 years. So for him to be like, no, this is my fault. It's like, bro, it's been 6 years. If she's running amok, it's definitely not your fault anymore. It'd be different if she just left, was on a rampage. It's like, there's plenty of time that she could have been on a rampage. So for it to just be happening now, I'm like, that's definitely not you. That's just you wanting to check on, basically your daughter. But we move on to Karlak, where Osha is still alive. Someone peers behind her. She goes to look, and the person runs away, and she goes to follow. We immediately cut back to Sol and Jecki, who are getting ready for the mission. He's like, man, I want to pick this mission for your first mission. But she's like, listen, I'm ready. He's like, even if that's true, we still need backup. And she's like, ew, is it Yord? And he's like, what's wrong with Yord? And she's like, nothing. He's just Yord. And they walk in to see Yord shirtless. And he's like, oh, my apologies. I'm sorry I lost Osha. Like, I will redeem myself. And Sol's like, it's cool. Just, get ready in 5 minutes. And Jecki is like, dude, put a shirt on. And they head out. Off the bat, Yord already seems like a kiss ass. So I could see why Jecki would be like, ugh, not Yord. But also, she's kind of like she's kind of like not like a bookworm, but she's very much like that kid that's always asking why. And you're like, yo, can we just go with the vibes, stop asking questions. Let's just see what's going on. So both of them kind of see like they could be annoying in my opinion, but we'll see where the show goes. We go back to Osha, who is continuing to follow what seems like a child. It turns out it is May, her sister, and suddenly she's back on Brendock, and everything is on fire. May starts to run away, and she's like, "You're with me, I'm with you, always as one, but born as two." And it's like, huh, what is that about? And suddenly it seems to be in like their old bedroom. Osha suddenly turns into a child, and she's like, "I thought you were dead." And she's like, "Did you kill Indara?" And May's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I'm gonna kill all of them." And then suddenly it starts to snow, and Osha wakes up back in the ship. So something is going on. Turns out the twin sister thing was actually the right one. I was like, okay, it seems, out of the four, what's the word I'm looking for? Predictions I made earlier, not the worst one. We'll see what they do with this. We go back to the ship. Jackie is like, "How well do you know Osha?" Soul says 16 years ago, he was stationed on Brendock. Her sister started a fire that killed everyone. Osha was the sole survivor. And Yor's like, "I didn't know Osha had a twin." And Jackie's like, "Yeah, it's not in her file." And she's like, "Do you think?" And he's like, "No, May is dead. I saw her die." And what I found interesting was he's like, "Oh, her sister started a fire that killed everyone." And I'm like, well, if that's true, why would she suddenly be out for revenge like years later? There has to be more to the story than her just setting a fire, because unless she's like putting the blame on someone else, it doesn't really make sense for her to be like, for her to kill everyone she knows and then be like, "It was all your fault." I mean, she could have just gone crazy, but I'm hoping there's more to the story than just that. They head down to Karlak. Osha sees the ship. As soon as she runs away, which I thought was weird because earlier she was like, "Oh yeah, the Jedi can be trusted. Like, I put my faith in them." So and it's not clear if she knew whether it was a Jedi ship or not. But if she did, I was like, why are you running away when you're like, "Oh, I trust them," and now you're like running for your life? I was like, what's going on? But yeah, so Osha is running away. They go to check out the ship. They don't find her, but Soul can sense her, so he's like, "Follow me." Osha runs into a cave, but she's kind of stopped by the cliff. The Jedi follow. They see Osha by the cliff. Yor is like, "Stop in the name of the Republic." So again, he's very much like by the book. Osha's like, "I didn't do it." Soul's like, "Don't jump." She slips off the edge, and he saves her with the Force. And this scene felt really weird for me, because I was like, I don't know why this is here. It doesn't really serve a purpose for me other than showing how much he's attached to Osha. But we already knew that because the show keeps like saying it. So for him to have this big moment of like, "Look, I saved like, the girl I care about," was like, I already knew that. So I felt like this scene could have been done like differently. We didn't need the whole spectacle of all of it. But he saves her, and she's like, "Listen, May is alive." And he's like, "I believe you, but you need to come with us." And Yor has his lightsaber already ready to go. Jackie's there with handcuffs. And so I was like, "Listen, everyone, stand down." And we end the episode with what should be my favorite part, because I love the dark side. So anytime you give me like a new dark side character, I'm like, "Oh, what can this do for me?" Even though Star Wars typically lets me down, it does have its moments where it can give me like really good dark side moments. So we hear this voice. It's almost like a Kylo Ren style, like that metallic, like wearing a helmet type voice. And it says, "The Jedi live in a dream they believe everyone shares. If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you fail. Steel or laser are no threat to them. But an acolyte kills without a weapon. An acolyte kills the dream." And then he ignites his red lightsaber. And the problem with this is he goes, "If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you fail. She already attacked the Jedi with knives, and she killed Indara." So I was like, huh? And he's, especially because he goes, "No steel or laser, no threat to them." She literally killed them with a steel knife. So I was like, what do you, I don't understand your train of thought, my guy, because you literally proved that wrong in the beginning of the episode. So like, what is your real stance here? And I don't understand why being an acolyte is the thing that really kills, as opposed to like I just don't understand the I guess metaphor that they're using at the end. So I was like, you're gonna really have to break this down for me because I don't know what you mean, my guy. But that is where the episode ends. If it is your first time here, I have a 3-point rating scale. It is one and done. Give it a chance, and I'm in. For this one, I'm gonna give it an I'm in. I think there's a lot of questions I have of the show of like, where does these people on the dark side lie? What does this man really stand for? Because he has a lightsaber, but he was saying like, weapons don't really work against Jedi. So it's like, huh? And she doesn't have a lightsaber. She was using knives in like hand-to-hand combat. So I was like, what's going on there? And then they said that she's supposed to be dead and she killed everyone that she loved by setting that fire. But is that really the story? Because it seems like there's more going on. Saul is really attached to Osha, which I feel like can lead to some very bad moments later on. And, Osha doesn't really have any love for the Jedi because she left, but she still kind of has faith in them. So there's a lot of things up in the air that's kind of like, all right, I'll see where this falls. And I'm interested enough to be like, all right, yeah, I'm definitely going to watch the next episode, which I did. So I do want to talk a little bit of spoilers. But before that, there's been so much discourse online about this show. And the majority of it, of course, has been the, the vocal minority, the racists, of course, that are like, oh, this show has, all characters that aren't white, go woke, go broke type dudes. I just think it's so crazy because it's like in a galaxy with so many creatures and like people, it's like, okay, who cares if, everyone doesn't look exactly like you. I think it's just so odd, especially because we have so much Star Wars that is, especially like the movies, are so full of like white characters. So I was like, bro, this is one show. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get the beef. But I don't know, that's their personal problem. And also there was that small line, which I didn't even notice the first time I watched it. I only noticed because I had the subtitles on this time. Of apparently Osha has moms, so a lesbian couple that people were obviously mad about. And I was like, dude, I didn't even know that they said that again until I had the subtitles on. So very personal thing for them, but that's their problem. But I haven't seen much like actual conversation of like, is this show good or bad? Like, why? There's not really any criticism. It's just a lot of yapping. So I'm not really sure how people feel about this show. Like actual like fans who aren't bothered by stuff like that. So this one is very interesting. I can say that as of right now, I've only watched the first 3 episodes. I feel like they're getting less interesting as they go on, right? So if I had to like this one, I give it an I'm in. The next episode, I'd be like, oh, I'll give it a chance. If the 3rd episode was like the first episode, I'd probably give it like a 1 and done. Like it's like decreasing. I'm interested in if the rest of the season can like pick it back up and really like blend the show into something that's interesting and something I'm like, oh, okay. Like I get it. I didn't see the vision at first, but I get it now. But for right now, I'm like, all right, we'll see if episode 4 can like pick things back up. And this is where I want to go into spoilers for episode 3. So if you don't want to be spoiled, thank you so much. I'll see you next time that I upload. I haven't picked the show yet, so stay tuned for that. But if you're going to stay, I'm going to do spoilers of episode 3 in 3, 2. And so the other thing I've seen online is episode 3 introduced this idea of these witches, not the Dathomir witches, but these other witches, which I was like, all right, cool. But they started doing their little chant thing, and just the way that it was like choreographed, and I think like the sound design of it and all that, I was like, this comes off very like school play, like Broadway, not like not like witches. This isn't like scary. This isn't like a uniform. They're all chanting, and it's like, oh, there's this magic going on. It feels very like odd, and I was like, what is this? I don't like this. I did like their mom. And I did like the concept of like, oh, we believe in a thread that connects everything and everyone. And, some people use the thread. This isn't this force. This isn't this like weapon to be used by some and not others. It is this like full on like life energy thing. I was like, oh, okay, I like that. But then it's like, yeah, but we use that to to make twins. And a lot of people are mad about the prophecy. They're like, oh, it takes away from Anakin because Anakin was, kind of like this Jesus type that just came out of nowhere because of the Force, or whatever reason you want to give. But that was the thing that bothered me for them. It isn't even the Anakin thing. It was just like, I imagine it takes so much energy from the thread or the Force, whatever you want to call it, to create life. So for them to be like, yeah, we created a baby out of the Force, it's like, okay, y'all seem way too powerful for that to be a concept that you can do. And then for y'all to just be taken out by like a fire is like, the math isn't mathing at all. You know what I'm saying? The math seems extremely off. So for me, that was the big problem of episode 3. It was just kind of like, I don't think y'all should have this power to be creating life out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere, but you know what I mean. That's one of the big things that really dropped down this show for me so far. So again, we'll see where episode 4 picks up. As I was saying earlier, I haven't picked the next show for next time, so you have to just stay tuned for that. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at Little Leafers. But until next time, peace.